Hello, everybody, and welcome to the entertainment headquarters, and welcome to my segment, Education, which is dedicated to genres of pop culture or any kind of subject that I have found interesting, but I don't have a lot of knowledge on. So I've been pulling together a few experts on the different genres and subjects to give me a bit of a small education. And the last two have been real fun, but now it's time to get deep and down with heavy metal. And who better to teach me the ways of heavy metal than my good friend from, guess what, the Metal Tavern Radio, Mr. DJ Anubis.
What is up? Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So, as always, this is all about my guest giving me a quick lesson or giving me the fundamentals of the subject that we're talking about. And of course, you love your heavy metal, it's a very big part of your life, it's the music of your life. So, take it away, my friend. Teach me what you know, and hopefully, I'll take away something for myself.
Yeah. So, hey, what's up, Brian? How you doing, buddy? So to really kind of go back before, as far as about myself and music and rock and metal, is that I can remember as early as age 5. So I was born in 1970, and probably about age 5, I started listening to music on the radio. Like it was, I didn't have any tape players or anything at that point, but I can remember listening to rock music early on from different classic rock bands, and that sort of what I gravitated towards. I didn't really care about classical or anything like that, even though I can appreciate those styles. It's just that rock was mainly where my love and my sometimes as a kid I would dream in my, at nighttime I'd usually listen to the radio. So that sort of like was instrumental in my dreams in some
Mm-hmm.
ways. As I got to be a teen, obviously, I started finally like dabbling into buying cassettes in the 80s. That's pretty much the main type of thing that we had for our music was cassettes. For those that
Yeah,
don't know, for some people in the 70s, it was the 8 tracks. I didn't have any of that stuff. Some of it was vinyl,
uh,
but for me, it was cassettes. So certainly, that's sort of like in the 80s is when I started really getting into music as a teenager. Obviously, the hard rock bands and hair rock bands of the 80s that
yeah.
started off kicking off a big thing. But there's a lot that goes on within the heavy metal and rock genre that most people would not even be really privy to. So I can't cover everything because
Mm-hmm.
you and I would be here for the next 24 hours trying to cover everything that's involved in this. We call it the genealogy. And so basically, this is a nice little thing that kind of breaks it down. Now, some of my stuff and how I classify things aren't exactly like this, but this is a great blueprint of where it all ties in together and when and where.
Wow.
Also, if you've never seen the movie Metal, A Headbanger's Journey, which was put out in 2005, it's a nice little thing. It does similar to this. It breaks down some of the genealogy, different subgenres of rock and metal, and then kind of shows you how it all started like tying in together. So that's a nice little
Wow.
thing to have. And again, if you've never seen Headbanger's Journey, it's a wonderful documentary on how it all ties together. Um, I have a few music clips I'll play for people. It's only about a minute or 15 minutes, seconds that I'm going to play. I don't want to play entire songs.
Yeah.
Also, I don't want to people that may not want to be listening, they can watch if they wish. But I will show you like little snippets of bands and give you a little kind of a taste of some of the stuff that I'm talking about. Now, I don't have anything really based upon the punk scene because it's not really something that I'm well versed in, but I do know of some of the bands early on that sort of influenced other metal bands towards the late 80s. So
Mm.
you're thinking like Sex Pistols, the Ramones, and here's a little clip from the Ramones for those that aren't familiar with what punk rock kind of is. The Ramones were like a really big band in the U.S. In the New York scene for a long time in the late 70s, and they were kind of the ones that influenced some of the bands that we got later on.
Oh, cool.
So when it's 24 hours to go, I wanna be sedated. Nothing to do, nowhere to go. I wanna be sedated. Just get me to the airport, put me on a plane. Hurry, 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 before I go instead. I can't control my fingers, I can't control my brain. Oh no, oh, 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 oh. So when it's 24 hours to go, I wanna be sedated. Nothing to do, nowhere to go. I wanna be sedated. Just put me in a wheelchair, get me on a plane. Hurry, 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 before I go instead. I can't control my fingers, I can't control my brain. Oh no, oh, 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 oh. So when it's 24 hours to go,
There you go. So that's an example of some punk rock. Now, some punk rock is a little bit harsher or not as well orchestrated in that way. The Ramones were a little bit more catchy in that way, but Sex Pistols obviously more volatile and crazy on stage and stuff like that.
I know that. I know of the Sex Pistols. I've heard of them, and I've heard some of their music, and some of it I do quite enjoy. As you know, I'm a fan of Iron Maiden.
Mhm.
So, and I got into Iron Maiden through my father, who they are the band of his life. He absolutely loves them. So, as you know, in 2023, we ended up, me and my brother, because my dad had never seen Iron Maiden since he was a lot younger, because obviously life happens, had 2 young kids, had a house, had no jobs and responsibilities. So me and my dad in 2023, when Iron Maiden did the Future Past tour, we actually ended up taking them on tour, taking them to the tour. And I had never really been to a heavy metal concert for many, many years, or that I can remember. Linkin Park, I remember going to see Linkin Park, but nothing since then of that genre. And it was one of the best concerts I've ever been to in my life.
Yeah, they're wonderful on stage. Neko and I saw Maiden for the first time. I think it was 2007, maybe not quite that old back. I'm trying to remember, but it was definitely the first time we'd seen. Was they were doing the Seventh Son entirety of the album and well their hits, and obviously it wasn't like back in their heyday, but still they still at their age was still putting on amazing shows live. And so they're a great band. They're well known within the heavy metal community, an icon of sorts. And we were talking about it off stream earlier today that they deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But you know, for me, it's more important that they're in the Heavy Metal Hall of Fame, which really is kind of overdue. We kind of need like a legitimate Heavy Metal Hall of Fame, not just like in passing, but we need like a legitimate one that's organized and can actually show appreciation to not only those bands, but bands that would be somewhat swept under the rug. Now, as I showed you all with this particular genealogy, there's differences on how they classify certain bands and when. So I'm going to kind of go by some of how I felt when I was growing up, like how I look at the birth of heavy metal and rock. And so the first group that I would put is basically what I would call classic rock. And these are, now this is before Priest actually became more metal ingrained with their sound. Back in the 70s, a lot of people didn't even know, including myself at one point, that Priest kind of started out a little bit more bluesy rock than it was. It didn't, before they eventually evolved into the heavy metal hard rock band that they were. But Sabbath has always been known as one of the godfathers of the rock and metal scene. And
Deep Purple, I know them. They're a great band.
Yep, you got Zeppelin, Blue Oyster Cult. So obviously bands like this kind of formed more of where rock and metal was going to go in the future. And so certainly great bands there, and ones that I really, really love a lot. which then we kind of go morphing into the 80s when this is when I, again, as a teenager, started to really dive into music just for myself. Like, you know, of course, I was in the midst of the 80s pop music scene, which was a big thing back then. I can remember the first two cassettes I ever picked up were Styx's Kilroy Was Here and The Police Synchronicity. And so, despite those not being metal or anything of the sort, that was still kind of like a stepping stone to where I would eventually go into, we call the hair rock, or what I would like to call when spandex ruled music television. And one of my favorite bands of all time, Rat, are in there, but obviously see Van
Motley
Halen.
Crue.
Yeah,
I like a bit of Motley Crue.
Def Leppard, certainly bands that fit that time period in the 80s. And that's kind of where I got my first taste of like the crazy hair and, you know, the higher octane vocals and music, as well as the edge to it all. And I can remember going back to the very first time that when music television, MTV, first started kicking in, and one of the first pieces of music that I saw was a band that I still like their EP a lot, even though I went on to like better bands. But this band called Rail was one that I always remembered the most. So here's a little taste of them.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Really like this one, and this.
Rock and roll. 5, 6, 7, 8. What do we appreciate? Rock and roll.
Definitely
So
like
you
that.
You like that?
Yeah, you need to send us a link to some of that band stuff.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny because, you know, I think they came out of the Seattle scene in the 80s, early 80s. And even though they kind of got overshadowed by some of the LA bands like Rat and Motley Crue and all of them that were around the same time, it's like that song I could just always remember, especially with the singer playing with his moon boots on. I always thought that was a funny thing. But yeah, it's a really good song. And it was initially a 4-song EP from the band Rail, and it was really, really good. I love every song on there. But everything since then, they kind of just fizzled out after that. But still a very fun band. A lot of fun looking at. Obviously, when it came for the hard rock, you know, you also got the mixture of heavy metal. So you brought up Maiden and Judas Priest, of course. I said in the 80s started becoming more and more aggressive in their sound. But, you know, to some degree, Priest, like for the album Turbo, was more geared toward the hard hair rock era because they were kind of just trying to find that sound. Eventually, they went back a couple of years later towards the early 90s when they made Painkiller, and that became, again, a much heavier record, which they went back to the heavy metal roots. But certainly heavy metal is basically what I would like to call lost in translation, especially during this period, because you had a lot of bands that were easily confused as hard hair rock, but their sound was more ingrained in heavy metal itself. So has similarities, but not quite the same.
Motorhead's a brilliant band.
Yes, Lemmy. And funny thing is, Lemmy was also, and I don't know if you're familiar with the band Hawkwind, but he was a bassist for them early on in their career in the 70s.
Oh, cool.
So before he went and formed Motorhead, he was also part of another band that I really enjoyed out of the UK.
Didn't he die literally doing what he loved? Because basically he got diagnosed with cancer and then he was on tour, and he went backstage and he died or something. But it was after the concert was over.
Yeah, it's like his last show, and like yeah. I mean, the dude was through and through metal. He lived for it, and he was always, much like Ozzy, a big icon in the industry for a very long time, and a lot of people like revere him as one of the icons in heavy metal. And you spoke of Maiden, so let's give people a little bit of taste of some Iron Maiden.
Cool.
Play with madness. Give me the sense to wonder if I'm free. Give me a sense of wonder to know I can be me. Give me the strength to hold my head up, spit back in their face. Don't need no key to unlock this door. Gotta break down the walls, break out of this bad place. Can I play with madness? The puppet stared at its crystal ball. Can I play with madness? There's no vision there at all. Can I play with madness? The puppet looked at me, laughed at me. He said, can I play with madness? He said, you're blind to see. No.
And there you go.
Boom.
Yeah, that looks familiar.
One of the best gifts I've ever had. One of the best people I know.
I don't know who that could be. Also, for those that are watching, if you have any questions, feel free to ask as well. I could try to answer them the best I can. I never consider myself the be-all, end-all on heavy metal history, but I did forget to bring my books down. I do have some great books to recommend. One is Sound of the Beast by Ian Christie, which is a nice history on heavy metal music. Fucking wonderful book. There's also a nice one on death metal called Choosing Death. That's also a great book to read for people that are looking for the history in death metal. So sorry I don't have them to show anybody, but I do have those books here.
And for people who are watching, it's like, obviously, I know we've talked about the books, but is there a regular monthly, like, say, heavy metal magazine a person could buy?
If you have bookstores near you that do sell magazine racks, usually there are. You have stuff like Kerrang, Terrorizer, Pits.
I know Kerrang. Kerrang
Yeah.
is well known in the UK.
Yeah, so there's still some like Metal Maniacs. I don't know if they're still printing, but those were some of the staples throughout the 90s that I used to have. In fact, I have a bunch of them that I have on hold. I held on to ones that I really wanted, but Neko and I have been using eBay to kind of sell the other ones out. Like some people buy them and collect them a lot more than me. So if people are interested in buying some missing editions, like let me know, because I have a bunch from Terrorizer and Pit and Metal Maniac. So I've been trying to see if we can sell them off for people that are the diehard collectors of these magazines. I only kept the ones that I really wanted. Usually with bands or members that have passed away, like it just means a lot more to me at that point with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the funny thing about Maiden too is that, again, when we go back to their origins, so the first couple records they had was really based more into the punk rock scene. This is before Dickinson took over as a vocalist.
Yeah, Dickinson, yeah.
But the band itself, like, you know, even though that song is a little bit more straightforward, they do have a bit of a progressive quality about them in some of their music. And so that could either turn people off or, you know, keep them interested in the sound because they want to mix it up and stuff like that. So
I think as well, whoever their business manager is, I think he's a very smart man because he keeps Iron Maiden in the forefront of the fans' mind, because you can actually download. They've actually got their own mobile game based on their mascot Eddie. And speaking of Dickinson, the lead singer, they've obviously got the Iron Maiden beer, which is which is quite popular in the UK, and he was actually doing something like an audience with him, where he was doing like a mini concert, maybe 3 or 4 songs, but he was promoting the new beer. So he was doing it around different breweries here in the UK. And it was something we were really thinking of treating me dad to, but the tickets are sold out. Having a beer with Dickinson and listening to his stories about his career with the band would have just been an epic experience.
And the other thing is that some people may not know is Bruce Dickinson is actually a pilot. So he flies their jumbo jet, which has Iron Maiden logo and everything on the side of the plane. They have a plane, and he's the one that flies it from on tour. So he's the one that's actually the pilot. So that's a pretty impressive thing. The guy can actually fly planes. I'm like, that's impressive.
Yeah, definitely.
I had to kind of go back and try to see if I can find when he started doing that, because imagine Bruce with his long hair just getting into the pilot seat. It's like, let's go.
Yeah, my dad is just the biggest fan. He's got every DVD, he's got every tour t-shirt, even though he doesn't go, he buys them off the website. He's got all the DVDs, he's got magazines, he's got everything. He's even got the big keg, but the Iron Maiden ones, he loves them. And they're actually going on tour again, I believe.
Doesn't surprise me.
The Days of Future Past tour literally was like a 4-year tour. It's just ended. They've only had 2 months off, and then they're doing this new tour. But I do know one of the original members, he's retiring. And they brought in a new.
And I think
it's the drummer. Did
he retire or die? I can't remember.
No, he had it. I know when we were actually in Leeds visiting them and like seeing them in concert. I think the week before, the drummer was absent and they had to bring somebody in for one night. Then he continued the tour, and it was like halfway through the tour, he announced he had a massive stroke.
Oh, yeah.
But then he was that dedicated. He came and he's finished the full tour. But he said after the Days of Future Past tour, that's going to be his last tour with the band, because clearly he's going to have to look after his health.
Oh, yeah.
But it just shows you how hardcore these people must be, and the passion and the drive that they have for their fans.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes, like, when we're going to get ready to jump into the thrash genre here, where sometimes bands, like, you may not think too much of them about on their records. Like, they might be good on record, but their live shows are what really set them apart. And I think Maiden is kind of like that. One thing I always know that Maiden and Priest are those are the kind of bands where their live shows are just something else. Like, it's a whole other world, and it's really, really impressive.
Oh, like, yeah, the Iron Maiden band, like, it was like they had different things keep coming out on the stage. Like, you had different versions of the mascot Eddie from different eras. They had the samurai one that came out. They had the one that was all futuristic with the eye patch and the gun going around just blasting the fans. It was hilarious. But my dad was just in his element.
Yep. And the thing is, like, you get to a certain point where basically we talked about punk rock and stuff like that. Well, there became a point in the mid to late 80s where punk and became a little fat. It got crossed over into the thrash genre. We started getting into the thrash genre, and really kind of starting a lot of the early 80s a little bit when Metallica came out, because Metallica has always been known to be the main guys that turn up the dial to 11. Basically, this is the band that's really sped up the whole scene in terms of the music. Of course, it birthed Anthrax, Slayer, Exodus, band that I really love, Lost Rocket, of course.
I've heard of Slayer, and I've heard of Anthrax. Oh, and of course, obviously, you said Metallica.
Mm-hmm.
I think out of all of them, Metallica, is that probably the biggest of the names there? Or?
Easily. Yeah. And they're always considered like the godfathers of thrash, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, other bands, that had come along that try to like we talked about the big four. You have Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax. Those were like really the big ones of the 80s. But then everybody else like Testament and Laz Rock and so on were also there, part of that. So here is a little taste of some thrash. This actually is from a band from the late 80s. It still just got reformed not too long ago called Forbidden, and I had the pleasure of interviewing the new singer Forbidden. We also got to see him. We got to see him last year at MBF. Great dude, Norman is. This is, of course, their older singer, but the song is called Step by Step, and this is Forbidden.
It's happening, it's slowly eating you, numbing your mind to the pain. You broke the rules, the pain is cruel. Selfish road, you paved the way. Hiding in your fantasy, it's easier to lie. The choice you made could kill. You're just one lonely victim of wasted life. Don't you feel as if your walls fall in? The way you live could put you underground. Step by step, by step, surviving, hanging by a thread. Step by step, by step, it's time to turn the table. Step by step, society's not done with you. Step by step, it just gets worse.
And there you go. So you can tell already that the riffing and the guitar style is a little bit faster, more complex than your usual straightforward hard rock and stuff like that.
I think my dad would even like them.
Probably, yeah. He sounds like somebody who kind of likes to clean vocal work, which makes sense a lot of times because some people, when they think about heavy metal, they're thinking the Cookie Monster vocals that we usually hear.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm not into that, like the screaming and like deep growling type vocals.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. Like that's sometimes it's a big turnoff for people, but it's so funny too is some vocalists that stand out from other ones still have like even weirder vocals. So like we think like King Diamond or Danny Filth from Cradle of Filth. Like there's like Danny has like almost like a banshee type of high pitched shriek, and it really turns people off. But it's also unique to him. So it's like when you hear it, you know it's him. Like you know,
another band. I don't know where this fits into the genre of heavy metal, but I remember a band called Korn.
Yeah.
Like my brother loves Korn. He's got all the albums. He's seen them a couple of times in concert. They're a band I enjoy. I think they've got like a unique sound. Yep.
They're in a genre we'll get to in a little bit for sure. In fact, I'll have a pretty good story about that as well. So close to what, heavy metal and of course thrash. Again, we have another genre called power metal, which this kind of is what I was talking about with you offline about with your shirt. Power metal, a lot of times their lyrical content is kind of based around like Tolkien fantasy stuff like dragons and knights and stuff like that. It's really kind of like their so a lot of their imagery on their artwork as well as their lyrical content is based upon fantasy stuff. So those would also include bands like Halloween, Iced Earth, Primal Fear, Running Wild, Blind Guardian. These are some of the earliest ones that we had around the 80s and 90s. That basically, again, it could be tied into heavy metal a little bit because they do have the clean vocals like we hear from like guys like Dickinson and Rob Halford of Priest. So it's got the high pitch vocal arrangements. And so I will give you a taste of some of the power metal, which, it's your dad would probably enjoy the shit out of this too, to be honest. Where am I? Sorry, guys. So yeah, I have to move you over here. Why? There we go. I'm fucking around too much. So yeah, there you go. So that's basically an example of power metal. The Iced Earth, of course, with Ripper Owens, which they've kind of gone through some vocalist changes over the years as well. Oh, look, here we go. What? Oh, you already did. All right, there we go. Thank you, Owen, very much. I should know. He's the host. He should be able to control this. I can't do it. I'm new to this. I'm just new to this.
But yeah, that's interesting. The fact that the power metal is based on fantasy, I find that really quite intriguing. So
yeah, Iced Earth, they kind of do dabble a little bit into a little bit of political area, but like the Reckoning, I think during that album they were kind of talking about like the Civil War and stuff like that. But stuff like Blind Guardian, Halloween and stuff like that, they really kind of were starting out as singing about basically like Dungeons and Dragons, Tolkien, and stuff like that. Now, some of that stuff, like in terms of lyrical content and ideology, kind of seeped into some of the black metal stuff as well. Rock and roll forever.
Yo, my brother. By the way, I caught some of your stream. Gonna watch the rest of it later. Really good stuff. Keep doing it.
Jedi is kicking ass.
Jedi is kicking ass. It's gonna put us out of a job.
I know, right? Like, what's up with that? All these youngins, like Alvin, all of them are gonna start taking over. We're done. We're finished.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously, for me as a teen in the late '80s, thrash became a big thing. Laws Rocket, Metallica, etc. And then like even bands like Sepultura, which were starting to move into more death thrash, and this is where it kind of gets interesting, because now we're starting to introduce rough vocals a little bit more into the thrash type of vibes and riffage and stuff like that. So that kind of opened a door. Like Sepultura kind of opened the door to death metal, as well as bands like Morbid Angel. This is where I basically said Cookie Monster has entered the building. You got Obituary, Death, which is a big staple. They're like one of the big influences of death metal, Bull Thrower, Entombed, and so on. There's just a slew of bands, especially both in America as well as in Sweden and the Netherlands and stuff like that. That kind of really opened up a whole different genre to me. So even though Napalm Death was probably the first one, Napalm was still basically influenced by punk and basically introduced, which was grindcore. And that's a little bit of a whole different thing, which I'm not going to dive too much into that, but it shares itself with the death metal genre. So even though this is a more recent track from this band, you're going to get a taste of what death metal is. It's one of my favorite bands. They've been around since the 80s, still kicking ass. Here's a little taste of Obituary. And there you go.
Interesting. The music is brilliant. Like,
yeah. And
like
thing is, like, even for
drums
them, like some of their, like that's probably a little bit more easy going for most people. Like you probably can get into that a lot, but whereas like some of the earlier stuff, a little bit more drawn out. At the time, Donald Tardy, the singer, was a little harder to understand. Like, and they did that on purpose because they didn't really want people to understand what he was singing lyrically. They so he was trying to.
Yeah.
His vocals were really crazy. So,
Yeah. Ulvin's got a question for you.
is Powerwolf one of your favorite heavy metal bands? Not one of my favorites. I do enjoy them a lot. They do a lot of great covers. They do a great cover of Black Sabbath. They do a great cover of Judas Priest's Nightcrawler. So they have a lot of, or maybe it's Touch of Evil. I can't remember which one it was, but they are a fun band. They also have great artwork, so that's one reason why I do like them. They like to use the werewolf a lot in their artwork. So do really enjoy them. They are fun. Great power metal band, obviously. So for anybody that's in, like, if you like the power metal stuff, like your dad might, he would dig a band like that.
Yeah.
Especially since they cover a lot of power metal bands and heavy metal bands a lot of times. So
yeah. I noticed as well when it comes to heavy metal music or rock music in general, one thing I've always noticed it be connected with is professional wrestling. There's a lot of like Lemmy in Motorhead. They actually became good friends with Paul Levesque, aka Triple H.
Yep.
And there's a lot of well-known bands, and that is as I grew up, and I kind of shifted away because I was like you. I was born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s, and I did know the odd band, but most of my history with heavy metal comes from my dad and my brother. And how I started getting to know certain bands is every time they did a WWE pay-per-view, they would have a heavy metal band who's released a new, this is like more or less in the 90s. So whenever there was like a pay-per-view, which was like a, at the end of the month, 4 weeks in, they would do like the Sunday night event on pay-per-view. And they would always have to promote that event. A band who was releasing an album, a heavy metal band, would release a song that would be basically the theme of that event. And that's kind of how I also was heavily got to know a lot of more bands throughout.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. And especially with mainstream. So probably about the mid to late 90s when Ozzy Osbourne put together Ozfest, that was actually kind of a big deal because obviously by the time the early 90s kicked off, we were getting more into what we would call the grunge age. Over here on the left, you'll see alternative rock. So you have a lot of these bands here. So they're not necessarily heavy metal bands, but they also still play a part in the influence to some of the other stuff that came after it. And also for bands like Nirvana, like, heavy metal was a big like influence on them, even though they weren't playing heavy metal. It was still a big part of that.
Yes.
So again, we're continuing down our little path of the tree itself. Again, we're not covering every single subgenre because that would take us fucking forever. It just would be. But you can kind of see where bands start to influence one another in one way or the other. So, for instance, for Napalm Death, Lee Dorian, who used to be the original singer before Barney came along, after he left Napalm Death, which was more death grindcore, he created a band called Cathedral, which plays more of like a death doom type style. So, and unlike, the thrash where we turn the dial up to 11, with doom, we're basically turning the dial down to 1. We're slowing it down. We're going to
drag the Pentagram.
Yes, they're a very classic doom metal band that's been around since the 70s, I think, if I'm correct.
What's that band in the green that just looks like a paint?
It says Cathedral at the end. That's the band I'm talking about in terms of Lee Dorian's projects. Yep. Yeah. So this is a genre that Neko really hates. So just so people know, but this branches out into a lot of different things like sludge as well as stoner doom metal. It's just chill out music a lot of times for people, but it also, deals with stuff like depression and stuff like that. Bands like My Dying Bride that deals like real human issues and stuff like that. So it has a variance, like much like every other genre, they can talk about many different things, but it's the way the music is presented that's a lot different than most. So we're going to give you a taste of a band called Electric Wizard, and you'll get to see what they sound like.
Electric Wizard.
And so there you can
Very
hear like
interesting.
so you hear like a lot of the distortion they use in their sound to kind of give it a little more of like a suffocating or a heavier vibe than you would normally get, even though the vocals are like more drawn out, and it's pretty interesting nevertheless. But
Yeah, like that video as well. Well, I don't know why, but I was getting Subspecies vibes. Like that's a song I could say featured in a Subspecies movie. It's just the tone of the music.
yeah, I'm actually thinking, I think the video footage actually comes from the movie Vampires from
Oh,
the late 70s, and then they remade one same thing. So definitely up your alley if you like it visually in terms of the visuals there of the vampires. So
cool.
one genre that during the late 90s or late 80s, early 90s that happened over in Europe was the black metal genre. And it's been a very controversial genre for a long time, especially in the early days with church burnings and the murder of certain musicians within the black metal community and whatnot. So it has its fair share of controversy in terms of not just the music, but some of the musicians and the theology behind it. So black metal generally deals with like a lot of Satanism, paganism, anti-Christian beliefs.
Wow.
They pushed hard against that, but some of it is just like we learned throughout history with rock and metal, is that sometimes it's just done for shock value, so they can be shocking. So sometimes they don't believe the message; they just want to use the imagery and everything to kind of push it.
This sounds weird, but we were covering a show called Hysteria, and what you're talking about sounds very similar to what the theme to that show was about.
Yep. Yeah, and so really the funny thing was like the early days of black metal, which is kind of funny. I don't know why they were so angry at death metal, but seeing what was happening in America with the death metal scene, these guys that started doing black metal were trying to mock it. They were trying to mock death metal. So black metal, as described, and it's probably a good way, it's fast tempos, shrieking vocal styles, heavy distorted guitars. A lot of times, as Neko would put it, a lot of times in the early version of black metal, because it was done through demos and stuff, that it sounded like you were banging trash cans together. Like that's how she put it. So she was never a big fan of that style of traditional black metal. But obviously over time, and the way that bands and crossover into other genres, and I'm going to play a band that kind of did that, it became a much better thing to me in the long run when they got away from like all the traditional sounds of like the very gritty, hollow soundscape that they were trying to do within their like basements. Basically, it became much more
Yeah.
polished. So obviously, to the purist of black metal, they don't really care for that. They rather keep it underground and very grungy and whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so but some of the ones that would be in this area would be like Immortal, Dark Throne, Celtic Frost, Emperor, and Bathory. Bathory being one of the early ones back then as well. So
Yeah, I've
I
never
basically
heard of any of these bands.
well, the funny thing is I don't have the picture on me, but Immortal was one of the earlier ones, and Neko and I, with my nephew at the time a few years ago, we dressed up as the trio of Immortal. I was a Bath, and we took a picture. So she did a pretty good job with the makeup and stuff. That usually you're wearing corpse paint, just very creepy looking musicians and corpse paint, and just the look themselves were trying to be. They got the big spikes and the leather, the blood, everything that they would try to shock people while on stage. So. But black metal itself has kind of evolved over the years and really kind of gotten better in my mind. Even for Enslaved, who is like one of my favorite bands that started out more in that traditional black metal vibe, they just slowly progressed over and over. So if anyone ever saw the video I did where I was kind of celebrating the Sci-Fi Society with that kind of psychedelic band that was in the background between takes, like between videos I was making, that was Enslaved. That's the modern day Enslaved, where they've progressed beyond what they once were. And I've got a clip. This is actually from 2006. So this is right before they really started going heavy into the progressive stuff. But this is a bit of taste of what black metal and the genre can offer you if you're into that kind of stuff.
Oh, cool. He's got a frog stuck in his throat.
Yeah, and you can see, like, even now, like, again, they approach it a lot differently. They use a little bit more clean vocals now, and they've kind of gotten away from that you can tell the guitar tone is a lot different as well. It's not really
you kind of tell me, though, singing like that with that by pushing, you can't tell me you can't do a permanent damage to your throat.
Well, that's the thing that people used to think. Obviously, for a lot of these guys that sing like this or death metal vocals, it's always about training your voice and taking care of your voice.
Mm-hmm. For instance, with any singer, really. If it's your profession.
Like if I were to try to do that, like just out of the blue, like no training, no nothing, no working my vocal cords. If I just went on straight and said, if I try to do that, I'm going to destroy my vocal cords. I will, because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. These guys, have learned how to kind of deal with this. I remember one time Barney, being an Englishman, Napalm Death, we met him some years ago. He was actually fighting a cold. So this was kind of weird because he's going to be performing. He comes in the back room where the food's usually being served, and I saw him and I said, "Hey man, what's going on?" We're talking. He's like, fighting a cold, but he's drinking tea. He does the English thing. He's drinking tea. He says, "Yeah, this stuff helps me in my voice." And so I was like, "Oh, okay." But he still pulled it off. He went up there and sang and did very well. But that's the thing. Like when you are touring and you're doing that and you get a cold, like, you don't just cancel unless you're like deathly ill.
Yeah.
You have to find ways to take care of yourself and your vocal cords and stuff. So it's important, that's
Yeah.
the thing. Like, but yeah, you would think normally just doing that on the norm. Like when I see chicks doing this kind of vocal work, I'm like, I don't know how they're doing it, but it's crazy. But they
It
have to
just
take
sounds
care of
painful, that's all. It sounds like they're
Right.
they're in pain.
Yeah. And I have like a naturally high voice, so for me to try to do something like that is like even worse. Like I can't.
Mm,
If I had to be a singer, like in another life, I'd probably be a clean vocalist. Like I'd be a power
yeah,
metal guy or heavy metal dude.
yeah.
But yeah, so another genre that around the late. Well, actually, it started kind of back with progressive rock and stuff like that. We know in the '70s you have bands like Yes and Genesis and stuff like that. But then eventually with Queensryche in the '80s and Fate's Warning, you kind of started getting some other bands that were just basically taking hard rock and heavy metal and putting in like the wankery, as I call it. Basically what I like to call it is wanking. It's finger licking good. So we're just getting the really impressive, the really impressive guitar playing, the bass playing, and so on, where you can really hear them.
That's what I love. I love hearing a good guitar.
Yeah,
And
and so some of these bands like Voivod, Dream Theater, which a lot of people will know them, obviously. But this is kind of where one of my favorite guys and musicians of all time, even though I love his Strapping Young Lad work the most, which is more not death, but thrash, industrial thrash. The thing about Devin Townsend is that he's very versatile as a singer and a musician and writer. Hey, what's up, Sensei? How you doing, sir? So yeah, Devin is very creative, very funny. He has a lot of fun on stage, but nowadays he spends his time doing more progressive type stuff. I think he was the other day. I didn't get a chance to watch it, but he did a live stream where he actually got an orchestra behind him to do his newer stuff, which was kind of cool. So I have to go back and check that out at some point. But he's always felt forward thinking, and this is a video and song he did probably around the time that King of the Monsters, so 2019. So you'll see the video is also very fun. He's a big guy into cats and animals and stuff. So, but you can
cool.
see also the influence in this song where it kind of jumps around. Like it's just pretty amazing. So here's Devin Townsend.
Million years would go by.
Wow, this is very different.
There you go.
Very different to what I was expecting, to be fair.
Yeah. Now, granted, if you were to listen to a song or a video from Strapping Young Lad, it's pretty much what you would hear like in the thrash, era stuff. So, hey, we got another Motorhead guy. Hell yeah! What's up, Tony?
I was going to see if Tony's joined in. Right? Yeah. The thing with Motorhead, they're done now. I don't think they'll ever bring it back, and I don't think they should ever bring it back because you do get bands where a member passes and they replace them, and I've always been kind of against that. I think you should rename your band or make a new band out of existing members. Like Drowned in Pool, they lost their. I remember they first started. They lost their lead vocalist. There is a band that I like. That I do have a number of albums. I don't know if I think they've totally changed the kind of how they were. Do you remember a band called Saliva?
Yep.
Yeah, and it was like how I mentioned to you earlier before. I got into them through WWE because it was Survivor Series in 2000 and something, and they used the song Always as the theme for that pay-per-view. I immediately loved that song, and I bought, I think, 4 their albums. Josie Scott, I believe, was the lead singer.
Yes, you're right. And I think he actually went and did a TV show for a while, too.
Yeah, I remember he was actually in that, the theme for the first Spider-Man film, I think, with Tobey Maguire. It was him and the lead singer from Nickelback. They both sang on that song. So I know that band. So would they be considered heavy metal or rock?
Well, you're actually going to go ahead and we're going to talk about the genre they are part of, because you brought up Korn earlier. And so basically, Hit Me Up with the Beat, new metal, which kickstarted off in about the early to mid 90s. Korn was certainly the first one in that category, but System of a Down, Deftones, Faith No More dabbled with it before Korn, but they were kind of more based in alternative rock at that point. Limp Bizkit, of course, is also another one of the bands from that era, and so on. So yeah, Saliva, Drowning Pool, Linkin Park that you mentioned, these are all products of the new metal genre that would eventually become, what we know as new metal. And I when I first discovered Korn, I was actually kind of impressed because they were doing something different that I hadn't seen in the metal genre. And obviously, new metal in terms of like metal fans.
Are they still going, Anubis? Is Korn still around?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
But a lot of diehard metalheads, I mean, it's kind of softened since then, but a lot of diehards for a long time hated new metal. They didn't like it, because one thing about new metal is they kind of stripped away a lot of the solo work, although some of them are bringing it back in. But they, obviously Korn took what Anthrax and Public Enemy did, or Faith No More, and they just made that their staple sound. They made like hip hop part of their actual songwriting. So it was a lot more funky and stuff like that. So new metal just doesn't do what traditional metal does. But even now, for like the Deftones, who despite kind of having their roots in new metal, have kind of progressed onto post rock almost. So I do have a little bit of a track from them. This is still when they were kind of dabbling with new metal stuff, but this is when they were kind of also branching out of that genre. So post rock to me is a lot like Muse or Radiohead, later Radiohead.
Radiohead,
stuff like that.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like off of White Pony. This is called Digital Bath.
Your eyes do.
Yeah, that's like more modern metal that I hear
Yes.
today.
Yep.
Like you mentioned, Corn, stuff like that, Saliva, where it's like trying to it's like metal, but it's also metal that's trying to, I think, cross over in many ways to mainstream. I don't know if that's the right way to look
No,
at
it
it.
is. And that's how they kind of ride that line. Korn and them all kind of base themselves on the mainstream rock metal circuit. So that's another reason why some metalheads get upset, because they feel like, well, that's not really the best that metal has to offer. Because we think of, like, for me, I think about all the underground stuff. Like if I were to tell you, so one of the big bands like in the early 2000s was a band called Evanescence.
Yeah,
And
Evan. I was
they're a
thinking that
decent.
he's the lead singer of them, I think.
Amy Lee, yep. So good band. But if I tell you that Lacuna Coil, who was around much longer and they were actually much better, deserve more attention, then that's just me kind of showing my bias because I love Lacuna Coil. And they are great. And Lacuna Coil has built up a base since then over the years. But the time when Evanescence got all that publicity and the popularity, like I'm kind of like, yeah, they're good, but here's Lacuna Coil, man, they're way better.
When I think of Evanescence, what I remember when they first started hitting it big, there was that one particular song that was also part of the Daredevil soundtrack with Ben Affleck. That was my first introduction to them. But then obviously I actually bought their album because I loved that when I liked their set. But I think I've only ever bought maybe 2 or 3 of their albums. After that, I kind of forgotten about them, if I'm honest. I think the earlier work, the stuff they're known for the most, unless you're a diehard fan and you follow them from day.
Well, I think
from day one.
To date, they've only done like 3 or 4 records in total, so they've been large gaps. But I think they've had issues with their keeping band members there and stuff. Like she had a falling out with the main guy that helped create the band and stuff like that. So it's always been kind of a weird dynamic with the band and their members and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's basically some of the breakdown of some of these subgenres. And obviously I can send you this little thing here if you want to put it on your site or something on the YouTube channel.
It will be some. Yeah, I could definitely put it up and actually keep it for myself, so I know if there's ever a band that I'm looking for, I know which genre of metal it's a part of.
Exactly. I do have a couple more examples. This is more just me kind of sharing my love for my friends who are in these bands. Obviously, for most of those that watch my regular intro from the start of my YouTube channel, I'm friends with the guys of No Moss, based off of their influence from Napalm Death to like grindcore and stuff. But now they're kind of more going towards death metal. But this video that was taken about 2 or 3 years ago, Neko and I were there for the filming of it, although I don't think you see us in this clip. But it was fun making the video for them. It's like the first real video they made for themselves. So it's called Deny Disguise. Here you go.
Describe you
Wow. And you were actually there and that was getting filmed.
Oh yeah, dude. They'd be fucking honored. Like they told me I can use any of their material at any time. So that's how much I love them and they love me. So I've known John the guitarist for since 1999. So that dude's been through a lot of different bands. But this is his most promising project since he started No Moss. And so I'm really happy for him. They're actually on tour throughout the US right now with Wormrot, and they're coming back to Maryland Death Fest this year. So we'll be seeing them with Oxygen Destroyer, which I'm going to show you a clip from Jordan's band, which I know that Kevin's a little bit familiar with because I use one of their songs in my Kaiju segment series intro. So their last record,
long ass song.
yeah, this won't be near as long as that, but because it's just a clip. But they used their last album as sort of like because they try to go into concepts a little bit. So usually Godzilla, Mothra, Kaiju, and stuff like that. But this one was centered around Gamera. And so here's a little taste of some Oxygen Destroyer.
That is fitting as well, considering it's Gamera's anniversary this year. So
yeah,
that's
we actually
great.
met Jordan at G Fest. He was the singer, was there at G Fest last year or the year we went. And that's cool about their live show is that they do play the videos like while they're playing in the background. So that's always a lot of fun to watch. You get to watch a movie or at least clips of the movies while they're playing for the songs.
Yeah, it's amazing though, like what can influence a band to create their sound and their feel and tone and what inspires them, and the fact that they've got a band that's dedicating its heavy metal music to the kaiju genre is just phenomenal.
Yeah, it's basically, in fact, they're one of the few that basically call themselves kaiju metal. Like there's very few bands that dedicate themselves as much as they do to kaijus and monsters and giant monsters like that. So it's always awesome. When I discovered it, I was like, this is amazing. Like this is like a dream come true because of how much we love Godzilla and stuff like that.
I've seen like people with the t-shirt, they've always got the green Oxygen Destroyer logo.
Yeah.
And then they've always got like a black and white picture and that, and it's always like a kaiju scene. So it's just amazing artwork. And speaking about metal, let's talk about some of the. Do you have any favorite album covers from some of your favorite bands?
Ooh, man,
because
that's so.
The artwork on some of their covers is just phenomenal.
Yeah, well, Oxygen Destroyer certainly. I don't have any on hand, but certainly most of the ones they use for their album covers are all in the green, white looking thing, and have a mixture of Godzilla and some of the other monsters and destruction that they've got going on. But you know, that's one cool thing about metal in general, especially no matter what genre it's in. Like even like I told you earlier about the power metal stuff, where they might take a scene of like some dragons like in medieval times on their art covers and stuff like that and put them over. Power Wolf, like Alvin mentioned, where they've got werewolves in like cloaks and and like hot girls or whatever in their videos.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty interesting.
I tell you what book not book, what album I enjoy cover. I like Iron Maiden's Book of Souls cover because
Mhm.
I don't know why it gives me Evil Dead vibes.
Yeah.
Because it's like the face and it's like wooden and it's like the book. Because I bought my dad as well because I got the album, but for his birthday I got him the one that looks like it's a special edition that actually looks like a book.
Hmm.
And you open it up and it's got like the special like book inside that tells you about the making of the album and stuff. It's just a fantastic book. And actually Iron Maiden, that's just reminded me, they are actually releasing a new book later this year,
Oh wow. Okay.
which is all about the history of the band. So I might have to grab that for Christmas. I hope he doesn't watch this video.
He might.
Because when he sees Kevin's doing a heavy metal thing on YouTube,
Yeah, I was going to tell you to call him in here so I can say, yeah, I heard you like Iron Maiden.
yes. But some amazing information there, and the fact that you went to the effort to show this for the audience is just much appreciated. Like, you've blown me away with everything you've told us. There's still a lot from. I'm still a bit confused. Oh, my microphone has gone down.
I hear you. I
Oh
can still
well.
hear you.
Oh well, this microphone's just went dead. It must be with all the heavy metal music. But
Yeah, the funny thing is, like, even the genres I did touch on is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much out there, and with all the crossover now, it's like even today there's people that will create subgenres. And I just lost him in the video, but people make up subgenres all the time now, but some of them I don't even care about recognizing just because I have my own basic genres, and I just like, if black metal, you have symphonic black metal, progressive black metal, symphonic death metal, and so on and so on. So I try to keep it more simple when it comes to the labeling. I know some people say, well, it's all heavy metal, which technically is true. But at the same time, if you were to come to me and say, and I always use this argument whenever people say that, oh, we don't need to have subgenres, but if you came to me and said, hey, I like Iron Maiden, so give me a band that sounds like Iron Maiden. Well, I can't tell you to listen to Cannibal Corpse because they sound nothing like Iron Maiden. So like, you have to have subgenres. You got to have it.
It's like any music, like even pop music, you've got different versions of pop music.
You muted yourself? Or did you just lose? There you go. Hello.
See, this is what happens. I invite Anubis on to educate me on heavy metal, and the heavy metal destroys me fucking channel.
It's the number of the beast. It's infected his computer.
It's weird that the power went off. My mic went off, my camera went off. Now the power's come back on and everything's back on. It's weird. That was just weird. But hey ho, that's the way things go when you go live.
Doomed.
I'm sure I've got that tattoo on my arse. 666. Anyway, like I was trying to say, like, there's so much that you've educated. I'm so impressed with the amount of effort you went in for tonight's stream. I truly appreciate it. I definitely want you to send us images in that band that you had put on earlier. Definitely one of the earlier ones you listened to as a young kid. I definitely want you to send us the link to them, because I definitely think that's something I could share with my dad. Because he loves this shit. He loves heavy metal, and I do like a bit of heavy metal, but it has to be a certain sound. Iron Maiden, absolutely love them. Ace, I've mentioned them. I absolutely love Motorhead. Korn can get away with them. Linkin Park. So would Linkin Park? So if my knowledge is it, would Linkin Park be in with new metal?
Yeah, although I kind of debate with Nick all the time because Linkin Park to me was a little bit more softer. They're more rock oriented, so like they're not quite as metal as most bands are in that genre. But because the first song they released, One Step Closer, was definitely in that new metal vibe, so that's why they kind of get thrown in with that. But I've always seen them a little bit more as a rock band after that album. So people like argue with me about that, but I'm like, if you want to consider them new metal, go for it. I don't care.
Yeah. So is
Yeah,
there any?
well, I was streaming on my channel too, so that's probably why. So even though this is happening on his channel, I did stream it to mine, so that's probably why.
Yeah, we're cross promotion. What can we say? Cross promotion.
Exactly.
Is there anything else that you feel like you've missed out on, or anything else you want to tell me about heavy metal? Because so far, I feel like I know the subgenres. I feel like I've just got the tip of the iceberg. We could be here for 9 hours.
Yeah, it would be a long time because, like you said, the genealogy map, like so many things just weren't even touched on. But it used to be that people would try to consider metal its own thing, but when you have bands that are starting out as rock, so like the Judas Priest thing where they were playing bluesy rock early on, like you can't just kick out that band. Like Judas Priest is an integral part of the heavy metal genre. So
Yeah.
it's like Metallica. Like as much as I don't really care for their later albums, I pretty much stay with their thrash stuff. But I can't sit there and say, well, they're no longer a part of that because they did all these other albums like they're rock oriented. So I can't say, oh yeah, now they're no longer in metal. I can't do that. So
Here's a stupid question. I don't know if it's a stupid question, but where does Kiss fit in? Do they
they
fit
would be
in?
like the hair rock stuff. Of course,
Yeah,
they've
I
been
always
around for quite a
wondered.
while, but yeah.
Because I always thought they were more rock than heavy metal.
But they were also very influential in terms of the makeup and stuff like that we would see later on with like black metal and stuff like that. So much for the fact that even Gene Simmons tried to copyright that shit. The only way he would, that guy's always copyrighting shit. We did that. That's us.
Well, apparently he is quite a small businessman. I don't know if that's true or not. But anyway, my good friend Anubis, thank you once again for helping me educate me on the beginnings. I'm going to say the beginnings of heavy metal, because this is just my little introduction to the genre. And you never know, I could end up doing something else on education where you give us a lesson 2 or something later on if you want to go in even deeper with the music. But I do have another idea for another education with you and me. I want you to teach me and educate me on all of your tarantulas.
Oh, okay.
Because I know you do your own segment, but I thought for anybody that's on my channel who follows me that doesn't have any information or would like to be interested in the world of tarantulas, you're the perfect person to get that down and dusted with. So is there anything you'd like to mention that's coming on the Metal Tavern Radio?
Yeah, so right now, tomorrow, I'll be getting together with Jedi Grand Vale for Vintage Cult Cinema as we're going to review the movie The Gumball Rally. And then Tuesday, I will be getting together with Samurai and author Rick Myers for another episode of Action Film Autopsy, which Rick basically gives his rundown on the shows and movies he's watched over the course of the month. Tony and I will have to talk because I've got a lot of stuff going on during the day with my mother-in-law. I've got to take her to some appointments, so I meant to hit up Tony and talk about doing Ghouls later in the evening. Both our shows, we have to kind of decide on what we're doing. I can't remember if I even gave anything out yet, but I'll get together with him. But we should normally get that done. Maybe we'll even do it Thursday day, maybe if he's available. But if you're not following us for the Ghouls at Midnight, he and I alternate picks, much like you and I do for cinematic, and
Yeah.
we just kind of bust them out to get them out there. We love talking movies, and so he and I have
Yeah.
been doing this for a while now. In fact, once we get to 50, which might be happening soon, we're going to do a live one where we're going to also be giving away giveaways. So we have some things we're going to give
Ooh.
away for that. So we got a lot going on with that 50th episode that we're going to try to have fun with.
I think Tony was right. He said the 50th could be the substance.
Could be, because I know we want to make it special and get some people on there, maybe including yourself. So substance would be a good choice.
Well, I would love to do the substance with you guys.
Friday, obviously on your channel, Into the Darkness again. We just did the Wreck franchise, which was amazing. But we'll be doing, for celebrating Anthony's birthday, we're going to be doing the Tremors franchise, which I don't know if I wish. Too bad Nico's working that day. She does love Tremors a lot, but we'll be doing that. And then later in the evening, I'll be getting together with Big Bad Wolf from my Kaiju Spotlight, where I'll be talking about King Caesar with him, and that's his kaiju that we've lined up for that.
Mm-hmm.
Oven is so is my penis. What are you guys talking about over there? How did penises get wrapped into this?
What the? Is that metal enough for you?
I guess so.
Well,
cod piece. He needs a cod piece.
Yeah. As for me in the entertainment headquarters, coming up on my channel, like Anubis has mentioned, we are for Mr. Anthony Jordan. We're doing the Tremors films 1 to 4 creature feature special for his birthday. We also have on the 3rd of May, we have the next Kaiju Connections creature feature review, which is also going to be the X from Outer Space, and we also have the Retro Classic Movie Show. We'll be talking about Reign of Fire. So a lot of great stuff coming on the entertainment headquarters, and of course, once again, I am truly amazed, stunned, and appreciated of my good friend, my co-host, the most of the time on this channel, Mr. DJ Anubis, for all of the things that he's brought to this episode of education. Please like, share, and subscribe to him now, because he deserves it. And
subscribe
if you want, if
he's
you
the
want
master
to,
now. I'm just a Padawan. He is the master.
if only. And if you want, like he says, you can like, share, and subscribe to the entertainment headquarters. But from me and from him, we wish you all a good night. Keep loving your movies, keep on loving your metal, and keep loving all things entertainment. And we'll catch us all at the next one.